Okay, so we'll begin the recording now. And I'm just going to go back one slide. So this is the Return Student Social, an opportunity to hear from our return students who have already completed off-campus IQPs. And we will begin with the presentations from those students. Starting first with Khadija Ibrahim, who went to Morocco in C20. Khadija, I'll leave the floor to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Khadija. I'm a senior studying electrical computer engineering, and I was lucky enough to go to my IQP last year in C-term in Morocco. So Morocco is just a great culture to learn about. So it's a Muslim country, so there was a lot more things that we had to learn beforehand, but we had a lot of good training from our advisors before going to Morocco in C-term. So my project focused on project-based learning. So it was trying to figure out how we can incorporate it into Moroccan universities since their structure of learning is a little bit different. But the projects did range. Some people worked on like nonprofit organizations. We also had a project about creating an app with one of the top universities in Morocco. So that was really cool. I also am a Gilman Scholar alum. So the Gilman Scholarship is a really great opportunity for those who have the Pell Grant with their financial aid package. So I didn't pay for IQP at all. I just applied for the scholarship and I was very fortunate enough to receive it. And it was the perfect amount for my trip to Morocco. So if you have any questions about the Gilman Scholarship, just let me know. But yeah, Morocco was a great experience. Definitely had a good time. And WPI did well with kind of handling the transition from coming from school and then going all the way to Africa. So that was awesome.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. And Candace, did you want to say anything about the Gilman Scholarship or where to find information?
You can find the information on the financial aid website. Application for the spring semester programs of this year is open now, and that will be closing. But for students who are applying to IQP now, and will get their placements in the spring, there's sort of 2 or 3 different application processes that happen through the Gilman. So there will be opportunities for students to apply. And right now, because travel around the world has been disrupted, and certainly students who are supposed to be traveling in 2020 have had changes of plans. Gilman is actually honoring scholarships for students who are doing sort of virtual study abroad experiences. So if you are interested in learning more about that, certainly you can contact me. But if you are a Pell Grant recipient, then you are eligible to apply. And I will say that WPI for the past few years has been nominated as a top sending institution. So a good percentage of the students who do apply for the Gilman through WPI receive the scholarship, which is really awesome. Even if you're going to what some people might consider a traditional location like London or Australia, those students, there have been students who have been awarded scholarships. So you don't just have to be going to the most remote or exotic of locations. So it's a really great opportunity, and it's awesome that so many WPI students receive that in addition to the global scholarship.
Great, thank you. Okay, and we'll move on to Catherine Blevas, who completed her IQP in London. Thanks for being here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine. I'm currently a senior here at WPI. I completed my IQP in E-term of 2019, which was just over a year ago. I went to London, England, which was amazing. This was my first time ever abroad. So as you can see by the photos, I did a lot of traveling, and I really tried to make the most of my time in Europe. My IQP team and I worked for the Design Museum of London. So in the center of the slide, you can see a photo of my group partners and I in front of the Design Museum on our first day of work. The museum offers various educational workshops for students ages 7 to 17 that focus on STEAM education, which stands science, technology, engineering, and the arts, and math. So what's interesting about that is that their focus is really on the arts, and the museum integrates the design process into everything they do, which is super cool to see, not only throughout the museum, but in their extra programs as well. So a little bit more about what my group did. We assisted in recreating those workshops to ensure that they could be adapted appropriately based on the age and experience level of the students participating in them, because the museum originally only had one version of each workshop that they were presenting to all of the students. So obviously that's a big age gap to cover with just one workshop session. So we helped to establish those different levels, and we did that by evaluating the UK education system that lined up what students were learning in school at their specific age level with the workshop activities. There was also very high demand at the Design Museum for a coding workshop. So since my team brought in some tech and engineering experience, we were able to create and implement a coding workshop that focused on the design process as well. So throughout the project, we were able to work with European students, teachers, and professionals, and review their feedback or receive their feedback and input on the different workshops. So overall, I had a really great experience, both at work and outside of work hours. Our sponsor was very open to our input on the project and really wanted us to run with our ideas. And he also constantly was giving us suggestions on places to visit in the city and just throughout Europe. So I could honestly forever. But yeah, if you have any questions or anything, let me know. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we have another Catherine Stovall, who completed her IQP in Nantucket. And Catherine, if you just want to let me know when to advance the slides, I'm all yours.
Does a thumbs up work for letting you know? Okay. So hi, my name is Catherine Stovall, and I did my IQP domestically. Now, I'm going to start off by saying that Nantucket was not my first choice nor my second choice, but in the end, I'm actually really, really happy that I got this. So this is a picture of Nantucket Harbor, and that's a picture of the Project Center, or the people that were at the Project Center last year. So my project was about the old mill on Nantucket. We worked with the Nantucket Historical Association. That is the picture, that is the old mill pictured behind some lovely goats. And our project was to make four physical interactive exhibits for the Nantucket Whaling Museum and the old mill based around STEM principles and the old mill itself and the technology uses, and a digital interactive exhibit, more about the history of the mill. But what I would like to focus on here is the presentation. The fun thing about Nantucket is your final presentation is televised. The link that's there, I can probably bring it to the chat at some point, or if anybody wants that link, I can send it to them. That is the link to my IQP presentation. And everybody that is on Nantucket, their IQP presentations are all available. So if anybody actually just wants to see a sample IQP presentation, there's one in the chat. Okay. And now I'd like to take the rest of my time to talk about why Nantucket is probably in my opinion, the best location for IQP, but then again, I'm a little biased. So these are some pictures just from around the island. The picture in the middle is actually from my sponsor, the Nantucket Historical Association and the Whaling Museum. The picture on the right is a picture of just what a standard house on Nantucket looks like. They're all that color gray with very few exceptions. It's actually really beautiful. And then the picture on the left is a picture from outside one of the restaurants. The fun thing about Nantucket is that there are no major businesses on Nantucket. I think there are 3 in total, and 2 of them are Stop and Shops. So everything is a local business. Unfortunately, however, IQP happens during the off season. So whilst those 2 places will be open, and in particular the Whaling Museum will be open for IQP students most likely, Nantucket does close down, and a lot of businesses do close down during the time that you're there. But on the other hand, you do get to spend 2 holidays on Nantucket. You get to spend Halloween and Christmas. or not necessarily Christmas Day, but the Christmas season. So the two pictures on the left are from Halloween. I actually dressed up and joined in the festivities. Not a lot of people from outside the island come back, but Nantucket is a really fun place on Halloween. We actually helped our sponsor with their stuff for Halloween. It's a really big festival. Everybody, all the adults, all the children on the island migrate to the center of town to do all their trick-or-treating and everything. It's really fun. And then what's more fun is Christmas. So Christmas on Nantucket is actually a really big holiday. The town gets dressed to the nines for Christmas. Christmas trees actually line the streets. And there is a fun festival that you're there for called Christmas Stroll. And Christmas Stroll is a weekend that's full of a bunch of events where thousands of people flock to the island, and you do get to experience a little bit of that off-season or on-season taste. And it's a lot of fun. Everybody gets festive. And then I think lastly, the main thing I want to touch on with just any IQP is that it's amazing what you'll learn. One of the things that we learned doing research was this recipe for corn muffins. It is the best cornbread you'll ever get. We didn't think we were going to come across the world's best cornbread recipe. We didn't think we'd learn as much as we did. And I personally didn't think that my IQP would be as good as it was, and that I would get as much industry experience as I would get, because this is the industry I want to work in, is the entertainment industry. So IQP, well, it might not be based in your major, can be a really, really great experience, and there's a lot that you'll learn. So yeah, that's it. If anybody has any more questions, let me know.
I love the enthusiasm.
Me too. And I'm hungry and I want to go to Holiday Stroll.
I was gonna say, I want the corn muffin recipe.
Exactly. Thanks so much, Catherine. Next we have Nicole, who, Nicole, is this the right slide?
It looks like it didn't download properly.
Oh
But
goodness, I'm really sorry about that.
it's all right.
Well, Nicole had a unique experience and I'll let you explain.
Yeah, so I was one of the students. I was supposed to travel D-term. I was supposed to go to Melbourne, Australia. Unfortunately, didn't end up going, so I don't have a lot of cool pictures to show you guys, but we still did a really interesting project and I still really liked my experience, so I wanted to talk about it. So my project was working with the Port Phillip Eco Center, particularly their Baykeeper. So the Baykeeper is part of an international organization called the Waterkeeper Alliance, who they all are basically advocates for different bodies of water. It actually started pretty locally at the Hudson River. So it's pretty cool to see that connection all the way over to Australia. And I picked this project because I really enjoyed the environmental aspect of it, etc. And basically we were working on trying to promote collaboration between all of the different advocacy groups around the bay. And we ended up basically developing a process that we wanted the future IQPs to try to follow and for the Baykeeper to try to implement into their next couple years of advocacy planning. So we essentially interviewed a bunch of different organizations, and we were able to hold online workshops essentially. And one of the really unique things about our experience is we were able to find online options that actually made these collaborative projects even more accessible, because the Bay is huge. Some different groups would have to travel 2 hours to get to the Eco Center just to participate in a workshop. So being able to explore some of these online opportunities was actually a huge asset to our project and potentially the future of this. So yeah, it was pretty unique, but it was still a great experience. And if anyone's interested in Australia, I can still talk a lot about the different trips and things that we tried to plan, but unfortunately did not end up following through on.
I really appreciate it, Nicole, and maybe in the discussion we can have a little bit more conversation about any questions people had about that experience, because it is unique. Unfortunately, not the only term that has been remote at this point, but I really appreciate you sharing. And last but not least, we have TJ, who went to Cape Town.
All right, so yeah, I'm TJ. I went to Cape Town last B term, which is crazy because that's almost a year ago now, but it feels like I was just there. But yeah, Cape Town's at the bottom of South Africa, so I don't know if you guys can see with like the Zoom things, but there's like a aerial shot. So that like little circle thing in the left on the left side is the like big soccer stadium. So we stayed right there, and then as you can see, it's in the city. It's near beaches, and there's two huge mountains right next to it. So you get like there's something for everyone there. You can hike, you can go to the beach, you can go to the city. My project was working pretty closely with an NGO evaluating the street people policy in Cape Town. So we got to talk to a lot of like city councilors, a lot of NGO directors, and then a lot of homeless people as well, to kind of get a better feel for how they could implement some new solutions. And then like our deliverable at the end was a video kind of raising awareness for the situation, and also some recommendations. And about 2 weeks ago, I want to say, they opened their first like re-inquiry into the homeless policy there. So that's really exciting for us because all the work we did there is now being used by these NGOs to petition the city for new changes when they reintroduce the policy. So it was cool to see our project have like a real impact. But yeah, it was a super fun time. Definitely was always staying busy outside of the project. We did a lot of sightseeing, went to soccer game, went hiking a lot, went to the beach a lot. So if you guys have any questions about Cape Town, let me know.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Very unique experiences, and I'm glad that we had a chance to hear from each of you. So our initial intention when we designed this program was to put you into breakout rooms and let you kind of chat on your own. We do have some applicants on the call, which is awesome. We're glad you're here. And we do have some returned students on the call who didn't present about their experience, but have much more to share. So I think because we're a smaller group, we'll keep it as, what do you think, Candace? Should we keep it as a group discussion, or do you think we have enough people to break out? We have probably about 4 applicants and then our return students. I'd be more inclined to keep it as a discussion.
Yeah, I think what we could do is sort of how we've run the Q&A with the directors, and just maybe for each of the questions, ask one of the return students, and then if others have things they want to contribute, we can let them contribute. Does that sound?
Sounds good to me. And that means Kyle, Kai-Pei, and Caitlin, I'm looking at you because I'd love to hear a little more from you as well. So here's some questions that we had come up with in the past. And Kyle, maybe you can talk a little bit about the preparation for IQP, if you don't mind. What was your ID 2050 experience like? And I might even use the second question as well. How did you balance the PQP portion? And maybe you could even explain a little bit of what the difference is between ID 2050 and PQP.
Yeah, so for me, I went to London last C term as well. For ID 2050 to start, it was pretty challenging in the beginning because I didn't expect it to be as much as it actually was. However, in terms of IQPs, most of the time you work on a project that you don't really have background in. So sometimes you get thrown in, you have to learn a lot quickly. However, after working with everybody in the class, the professor and my group individually, it was a very meaningful experience. And a lot of people do say ID 2050 sometimes isn't the most fun class to have, but learning all the experiences and prerequisites that will be needed on your actual IQP is something that's definitely invaluable. So it was overall a really fun experience in my opinion. So, yeah.
Just a reminder that you take ID 2050 in the term before your IQP, and you do have a 1/6 PQP, which is meant to be the placeholder for the time that you meet with your team or with your advisors who would be advising your IQP for the term following that.
Yeah. In terms of the PQP, that was probably my favorite part of the preparation phase, because getting to meet the professors that were actually going to go with us is something that's really cool. Get to know them beforehand, so you don't just show up to your IQP and have to get to know them. Also, our professors helped us get into contact with our sponsor a lot. So it's very helpful to make sure that by the time we went to London, we already had everything planned out and we knew what we were going to do and made sure that we were going to have a successful time there. So it's pretty cool.
Is there anyone on the call who had a cultural prep in addition to their ID 2050 and PQP?
Yes, I had a cultural prep for Morocco.
Ed, can you talk a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, sure. So Morocco, like I said, is a Muslim country, so there's a lot more things that we have to take into consideration that we do differently here than they do there. So we kind of learned more about their customs and kind of how to properly greet people, the way the standards of a woman and a man are. In Morocco, it is different, so we had to kind of just approach that because it was a reality, just how they treat different genders. We also learned a little bit of the language and the customs. So Morocco, they speak a form of Arabic, so it's called Darija, or they speak French. A lot of people do speak English, but we definitely needed a little bit of French and Darija at some points because it did get a little bit harder. But so they did a little bit of prep on that, but mostly it was just about the culture because it was very different. So yeah, for our ID 2050, we had a few classes where we just talked about basically like how to dress and how to greet people and just different customs that we had to keep in mind that we would do here, but it wouldn't really translate well in Morocco. So.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Caitlin, I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about your group experience. How was the group dynamics on your team? Is there anything that surprised you about that process?
Yeah, so I worked on a team of 4, and my group was supposed to go to Paraguay in D term. So we had ID 2015, the C term beforehand. Our project was based on creating a solution for erosion control at a farm school in Paraguay. It was interesting because my team members all had different backgrounds in terms of majors. I was computer science. My one teammate was environmental, so that was very helpful because she added a more insightful perspective. My other team member was robotics mechanical, and my last team member, he was BME. So we were all very varied in what we brought to the table, but it was interesting. The group dynamics, you know, in ID 2050, my professor gave us weekly goals and expectations to meet for the next week. So that really helped us structure how we wanted to run our team. So we would set up deadlines for ourselves in the meantime, and that helped us stay on track.
Yeah, you and Nicole had a very unique experience because not only working together, but trying to work together remotely as well. I think Candace and I would say that's just as hard right now for our team. Anything else, Caitlin?
I think that was all. Yeah, one thing that was helpful for my team was that the professor for ID 2050 was also intended to be our advisor on site in Paraguay. So that definitely helped the transition from C term to D term being remote.
Okay, I'll throw this question out to you. What's one piece of advice that you wish you had prior to starting IQP?
Actually, coming into mind, I have several, but the biggest one I would say is that be prepared that your IQP project itself would very likely look very different from what you imagined from ID 2050. Because when you're back on campus doing ID 2050, you are kind of imagining the place with the materials you have, the pictures, the videos, and the research paper. And based upon that, you probably have like a scope of what you want to do with this project. But when you get there, actually see the place, actually meet your project sponsor, you will notice that, oh, there are so many things that needs to change. Just don't be surprised about that. And it's usually good. It usually means, it's it's actually a good sign from my point of view. It means when you get there, you actually get to see the place more in depth, and you are eventually able to modify your project to actually meet the needs of the place and to eventually change a little bit of the place.
That's great advice. And I think something that a lot of people are surprised by how much so for the applicants on the call, typically you'll receive information about the projects that will be completed for the term that you're going, usually by the beginning of the prep term or just a few weeks ahead of the prep term, because the directors are always working, 1 year ahead to set up projects at the site. So you'll see an abstract of what the sponsor has proposed as a project, but like Kai-Pei said, it can change pretty drastically, and then even into the project term, as you actually start to implement things, it can change again. So that's all part of the learning process. And what I like to remind students of is that those changes and the challenges that come along with those changes are, your advisors are expecting that. So sometimes students get worried that if there's a drastic change in the project that it's going to affect their grade, or that, now they have to change their deliverables, or they have to change, course on what they started working on, and they're going to be so behind. And I think what you'll find is that your advisors are ready to coach you through that, and to help you navigate what really does happen when, a project completely takes a new course, or the work that you previously did is not related to the final product that you're trying to work on. So just remember that that's part of the experience, and how you navigate it is more important than the final outcome. That's just from my point of view. Candace, do you want to throw out a question?
I do. I was gonna say, Christina, what surprised you the most about your IQP experience?
Hi, sorry, there's a lawnmower in the background. I'm just gonna shut the window quickly.
Oh, okay. I can't hear it.
Pandemic life,
What surprised me? I would say, probably the cultural experience when I got there. I think in the beginning, I was expecting it to be a lot similar to how I live now, but it was definitely very different. In a good way, though. A lot of the things that I learned there, I definitely think about now. I went to Copenhagen, Denmark in A19. So they're just like a very minimalist, laid back country, which is awesome. They're kind of just doing their own thing. No one's really like worrying about, what you're doing. So it's a very like individualistic country, and there's a lot of history there with like the Vikings and all that stuff. So they're a very proud country, and I thought that was really, really cool. And I definitely was not expecting to be as culturally shocked, I guess, than as when I, stepped off the plane and moved my stuff in and had to go grocery shopping and everything was in Danish. And it was like, oh no. But yeah, I would say that was probably the most surprising part for me.
Awesome. Have we heard from
Can I add just one more thing about this?
Yeah,
surprises?
of course.
So I went to Monteverde CTERM 2020, Monteverde, Costa Rica, And since you heard the name Costa Rica, you're more thinking about the coastal part of Costa Rica, which is really going to be very hot and dry. But since Monteverde is within a mountain, like the inland of Costa Rica, even though before we set off, we have advice from our project manager about what clothes to bring. I was still very surprised that we arrived in a place that is moderately cool and with a lot of rain.
Yeah, I have something I'd like to add as well. So for me, when I went to London, I would definitely say I completely underestimated the size of the city because every day I had to travel an hour and a half on the tube just to get to where I was working with my sponsor. Because he pretty much was right near the airport in Hounslow, and we lived in central London. So it was definitely a shock because I didn't think we'd be traveling that far out every day. But at least on the tube, it went by a lot faster than expected, but it was still definitely a different experience because you would think that it'd be about 10-15 minute walk or something from where you live, but having to travel as if you were going to work, it was a pretty cool experience, I guess.
I also have something to add to that.
Sure.
Particularly with travel and culture and stuff. Like when I went to Nantucket, when we were in ID 2050, we learned a little bit about the culture of Nantucket, but it's the United States, so people don't think there's much of a culture difference, but there's actually like a huge culture difference. I was a little bit more used to it just because I'm also from an island, so it was a similar experience to me, but still very different. And the fun thing about Nantucket and travel, which I don't think a lot of people think about before they get into ID 2050 and find this out, is that most people you're not allowed to have cars on the island when you're doing your IQP, and a lot of people don't travel by car. A lot of people travel by bike, and a lot of sometimes project work will be in town where we're staying, but other times it'll be out somewhere far on the island and you'll have to bike there. Not even like just there was one day I actually had to walk to our where we were doing our project work, and it took me 40 minutes to get from there, even though it was like maybe a 20-minute bike ride or something like that. So it was a lot more biking than I thought it would be. And it was a lot different of a culture than I thought it would be. So even like domestic places, it's just like, whoa, that's not what I'm used to.
Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have anything to add to that surprise piece? Okay, so I think we just didn't cover one question here, and that is, what was project work like? How did it differ from a typical term on campus? And I guess how about the other Catherine? Sorry to refer to you as that.
Hi, that's a great question. So I know for me at least, when I was on IQP, I talked it over and we decided to kind of treat it like a 9-to-5 job. That way we would have the most free time, and we would also have the most structure to get work done as efficiently as possible. So kind of like Kyle said, my sponsor was about 45 minutes away from where we were staying by tube. So we went into work every day, which was kind of cool to be like a London local. But we met with our sponsor every morning. He would always stop by our desk. He had a place for us to work within the office of the building, which was really cool. But yeah, we just kind of structured it like 9 to 5. And we had our sponsor there to hold us accountable for like showing up to work, making sure that we're doing work. We also kind of dressed a little bit more professionally just to get us into the work mindset. But yeah, I think that for me, it definitely was more like kind of going into an internship rather than just being a student on campus.
I would like to add to that as well, is I definitely recommend when traveling to talk to your sponsor and plan out specific times that they want you to be with them. Like with my sponsor, he was in charge of emergency management in London, so he was not the most available person at all times, especially with Corona and everything going on. So we'd have to basically like 3 times a week we'd meet with him, and the other 2 days it was kind of up to us whether or not we wanted to travel to where we were working or just stay home and work from home. But that's definitely it's definitely nice to have that set schedule like an internship or a job, so you hold yourself accountable for what you're actually doing.
Would anyone else like to add anything?
Oh, you can go, Caitlin.
Oh, the one thing I was going to say is for a normal term on campus, most of your assignments are given due dates and given grades by your professors. But for IQP, it's a lot more self-driven. So you may have a deadline, but most likely you determined it or you talked about it with your advisor, and it's less grade oriented and it's more you trying to do the best for the project. So that's helpful because it like makes you motivated to do the best work you can do.
To add to that, I know with my project center, my team was the only one that had the structure of a daily 9 to 5, where we like got up in the morning, got on our bikes, went to a separate location, and I think that we were really lucky with that. So if possible, it is really like the best way to do it if you can, but I know not everybody can, and with ours in particular, and like project experience differing from time on campus, is that due to the nature of our project, everything was entirely different. Like we were using lots of equipment that we don't usually use here on like campus unless you're in like a specialized department or a specialized class or something. So IQP might not even just be like, hey, you sit down and do things on your computer all day, or you do X, Y, and Z. It could be that way. But sometimes IQP is you have to figure out how to, or you have to learn how to use a camera, or you have to learn how to use a specific kind of saw or something. So it can be like my experience here on campus, like, or my experience on IQP was more like some of the stuff I do for extracurricular here on campus. So it was very different.
And I want to go off just what Kaden mentioned about there's like not a deadline for every week. That not on one side it motivates you to try to do the best for your project, but on the other hand, it also gives you a challenge about how you are going to plan out through these 7 weeks. You definitely do not want to write your paper in the final 5 days to just so that you can get a grade. So a big thing to do is, I would suggest, is to plan out what you want to do over the 7 weeks, around like during the first week. I would strongly suggest planning out that, even though the plans are going to change, but the plans are going to tell you, hey, where you are, how close you guys are to completing the project, and is there anything else we can do about this project, and do we have time, etc.
I would like to just add one more thing, if that's okay.
Of course.
I just wanted to say that for me personally, I really liked my IQP because it was a nice break from like all the engineering and math stuff all the time. My project was mostly a social project working on the United Nations Sustainability Goals. So I got to meet a lot of locals and work on how to network between them all. And I really think it helped me become a more well-rounded student, understanding the social concepts that affect other countries. So my advice would be, if you get the chance to, try to get a more social project, because you have, your 4 years of college to do all the technical math stuff. So definitely try to get a social project. That's my piece of advice, I guess.
It's so great to hear from all of you, and I hope that the student applicants on the call are finding this a good discussion as well. I wanted to just remind those students who are applying that our office is available for general questions about the application process. You can reach us at global@wpi.edu. And the application and the preference form are due October 5th. So you still have plenty of time. But if you think of questions along the way, where our virtual door is open. But we still have a little time. If any of you who have joined us for the call have questions for our returned students, I'd love to open up the floor to you. You can just unmute and pose your question if you have one.
You can also type in the chat too if you feel more comfortable writing it in the chat.
Yeah.
Michael, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Well, I showed up late because I was in a course, so I kind of missed the first half of this presentation. So can we get maybe like a general kind of just, I don't know, like debrief of what happened during that?
Sure. Well, I can tell you even better. We recorded it. So we had 5 students who presented kind of a brief elevator pitch about their experience. They all did a great job. So if you want to go back and listen to that, you can. And then we jumped into questions, but many of them were the ones that were posted up there. So yeah, if anybody wants to add anything else, but Michael, I think the best thing would just be watch the first 10 minutes or so of the people who were able to present.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else?
I do have a question.
Awesome.
So, I guess just if there's anything to add to this, I don't think we covered it, but how would you say the preparation, such as ID 2050, prepared for group dynamics or group work? Was there specific preparation for that, or are you expected to just learn it on your own?
I can touch on that. So in ID 2050, our professor made us sit in our teams. So everything would be kind of like class oriented, where we all listen to the professor. She goes over an assignment or whatever it is. And then you kind of work with your team on the project or whatever specific task it is. And then you discuss as a class. So it kind of helps you get that team bonding skills, especially for once you go to IQP, obviously. And it was very recommended. I remember the first day I showed up to ID 2050. She was like, you may be able to sit with these kids for the entire class the whole time, but it'd be nice to like maybe go out for dinner or go out somewhere just as a team to try to build that friendly relationship. So by the time you get to IQP, you don't like hate each other. So it's nice to be familiar with who you're working with. And yeah.
I can add to that as well. So for my, in my ID 2050 class, our professor actually had someone from the STCC come in, and they ran a training session for us about teamwork and communication to really help us work through whatever issues might arise, because I promise you, you will run into group issues, and that's okay. But they really kind of talked us through how to deal with those, and then prompted us with questions and reflections to do throughout that session to kind of get us talking with one another about that.
And just going along with that, your advisor does a lot of things to like promote the groups working together, because you have to get a lot of work done. So you do like presentations and you have papers and stuff to do. So you would end up meeting them a lot throughout the week anyway, but they definitely did like emphasize that. I think for me in my ID 2050, my advisor handed us all out like a puzzle piece, and we had to go around and find the people who had the missing parts of our puzzle, and that's how we like found our group. And then we just connected from there, and they just always continued to do like team building activities. It wasn't like obvious in the beginning, but you could see towards the end, like that was what they were working towards. So yeah, you'll definitely learn how to work with the team well and figure out, you know, who's more introverted or extroverted and things like that.
I'll just make a plug. Catherine, you mentioned the STCC. Um, some of you might have heard of the Sweet Squad, which is a new initiative on campus to support teamwork. Obviously, there's so much teamwork even outside of the IQP that happens on campus. And the Sweet Squad is going to be a group of students, faculty, and staff who are trained on the information that the SDCC provided as part of the team building exercises, and then other information as well to help teams that are either struggling or just want to have kind of that that refresher and maybe, you know, some first ideas to work together on. So by the time you're going on IQP in 21-22, there will be a fully trained and staffed cohort of Sweet Squad fellows that will be able to help out with teamwork. Great question, Chloe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, I'll take.
Oh, you just muted yourself on accident, I think.
I did the opposite. I thought I was on mute. I will take that cue to say thank you so much. You know, this virtual environment has presented new challenges and new ways of doing things, but I really appreciate the time of the students that have already gone away and your opportunity to share your experience, and those of you that were able to join us live tonight to hear a little bit more. So I hope you found this valuable, and we will post the recording on YouTube for those that couldn't make it. So have a great evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks again.